Why is the sky blue?
Look, I know it's the way the light fragments through the Earth's atmosphere, or refracts, rather. But I'm not sure that's the full answer.
Well, the real question is, what is blue, after all? Is my blue your blue?
You nailed this last time. Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Today, we're exploring a new question, and today's question is...
Yeah, so today's question is, how does one take care of themselves and create a safe space without isolation, especially when other people are depending on us? Because I think it can be kind of tough when like we have the pressures of trying to provide or take care of others, and then we also need to take care of ourselves so we can be at our best. So yeah, it's I think it's a matter of balance, but it's also a matter of the right perspective. Yeah, what are your thoughts in that vein?
So the question is, how do we take care of ourselves without isolation?
Yeah.
And that withdrawal. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm very guilty of, actually. Yeah, like pulling away and thinking that I need to be 100% before I can, go out and show up and be there. What comes to mind when I think about that question is like where that habit comes from. And I think for me, I kind of see early childhood when, perhaps you're looking for support, connection, help, just someone to be there to kind of guide you, and that's not there. So the only way to get the support, or to feel like you have the support, is to kind of take on the weight of it all yourself and to pull away. And I think that's now a challenge for me as an adult and as a man, because the only pattern that I've developed was from that childhood when I kind of just had to pull away and do it all myself. So it's kind of hard to now reintegrate a new story. I don't know. What does that relate to? Can you relate to that, or?
Yeah, I can totally relate. It's you raise a deeper question. I think it's like, how do we integrate? Like I guess the bottom line is, how do we integrate when we haven't always had the leadership or the person to look up to? Yeah, that's a tough one, and I think it's a great way to shed light on that initial question. Yeah, let me kind of go at that from the angle you brought up, because I think it's very relevant to everybody today, because we've moved culturally, we've moved away from more of our tribal structure, and like, the elders and the collective parents taking care of the younger people. And so it's a different ball game today for pretty much everyone. Yeah, I think the next step, like after realizing that's the case, because many of us face that challenge. One thing is tough. Like once we've grown into adults and we've learned that pattern, is like still being open to a mentor, right? Like knowing that having the openness to seek a mentor, even though to date we've done everything ourselves because we've had to. It's a huge act of courage, I think, to take a kind of a leap of faith, to trust others when we know that we haven't always been able to. And so it's like, how do I trust that not only that there someone like that exists who I can look up to, but also trust myself to find them, trust myself to be vulnerable enough to open to the possibility when it arises. Yeah, it's a really challenging one. It makes me think of
how does that look to you? Like, how have you then? Because I think you've spoken to me before about how you've connected with other men, but I know that's, as it is for me, like a challenge. And I think you mentioned trust, and it's hard to open yourself up to those male role models when, perhaps there's been times in our lives as men when we've had that, the father figure is the hero, and then they disappoint us and let us down, or worse for some of us. And how does that journey look, or how has that journey looked for you to be able to invite male mentors into your life?
Mm. Well, I'll be totally transparent. It's an ongoing journey for me, um, because it's this. What I always find challenging myself is that when for so long you've had to basically pull yourself up, and fill that role for yourself, it's really challenging then to to kind of let yourself look up to someone without feeling small and without feeling like you're betraying yourself, because that's what's really tough to me. And so a big aspect, I think, undeniably, is humility. And I heard somebody say recently that humility can be could be defined as the admission that there's more for us to learn. So not necessarily that we're less than, or that we don't. I mean, inherently we don't have the answers, but the essence of humility could be defined as the admission that I have more I can learn. And so, and that totally flips the script, right? It's no longer this like feeling of negativity toward the self, like I'm inadequate or I'm not this, but instead it's like opening the door to potential, right? Like I have so much more I can learn. And when we have the courage to be humble, that changes it. But I think that underneath that is one other thing that I always feel, that, like I said, I feel the fear of being vulnerable. And I think that it's the assumption that if I do admit to someone else externally, that I don't know something, that I do have more to learn, that it somehow puts me at a disadvantage, or somehow puts me or creates a perception in their eyes of me as foolish or as lesser than, or whatever it might be. But that's the illusion part. I think that the reality is it's an act of courage. Reminds me of I think it's the Seneca quote that if you want to learn something, or to gain knowledge, be content to be seen as a fool. So yeah, just that willingness that even if you do look like a fool, you have enough belief in who you are and what you have to offer, that it doesn't make you feel lesser than. But I realize that's kind of still leaves a lot to be said. So what do you think?
I really like that message of the courage to be humble. Kind of seems like courage and humility are, one is making yourself small and one is making yourself bigger, almost, to kind of go out there and win the battle or win the moment or whatever it looks like. So it's just an interesting combination of words. But yeah, it is courageous to be humble in today's world, because it's funny, there's a comedian, Pete Holmes, and he talks about like that period of time pre-Google where there was the not knowing and you just had to like sit within the not knowing, because you didn't have a device at your fingertips that could give you the answer in 3 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've become so comfortable with this idea of being able to know everything, or the feeling like we can know everything, but then in the moment we're stuck and we're like, well, I actually don't know everything, and that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we're not comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we pull ourselves away trying to find the answer in order to then go out and give that to the world or whoever needs it. But yeah, I think there's beauty in the exploration with other people of the not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not linear, right? Like even our mentors are asking questions that we might have the answer to as the mentee, but they're just at a different stage, right? Or they might have become disconnected from those answers they found in their youth, like you're approaching life and challenges with this, vim and vigor, and then you get older and your priorities shift, but you wish you had that vim and vigor. So there's kind of learning from both sides. And I think there's the danger in, putting anyone who is ahead of us on that pedestal, because it limits both of our learning and both of our growth, but in different ways. And I mean, it just came to mind when you were talking about self-care and withdrawal, and in some ways this is this is a tangent, but I think an important tangent and coincidental or not, that I actually reached out to one of my high school teachers the other week, and he'd become like a bit of a mentor post school, and we'd have coffee very infrequently, but he was always a big supporter of mine. And I guess some challenges that I've been having around identity or faith, or like, what does that mean? And then like I invited him out for a coffee, and that's really uncomfortable, because it's like, what do we talk about? Like, what am I seeking to find the answers to here? Like, I didn't really know what I was asking him.
Yeah.
And it did feel like scary. And maybe that's the point, right? It feels scary to open ourselves up. That's where the courage is. But then once we're in the arena is where we humble ourselves, right? It's the courage to step in, but then the humility to just shut up and listen. Because once you're in that space, like, there's obviously a reason why we've reached out to these people. And as we know, people love to talk about themselves. So if you just like show up and you're just there, and maybe you have one question, or like, here's what I'm stuck with. Here's where I'm struggling to look after myself. Like, how have you looked after yourself? Or how have you overcome this challenge? Or, what supports are important to you to help you navigate times like these? And then just sitting back and sipping on your coffee or sipping on your tea, and then just seeing where the conversation goes. But again, all of that's to say that self-care in the modern world is not putting a face mask on and watching rom-com films, with
well said.
Like, that's not what it is. It's like maybe social connection, or maybe mentorship, or maybe like self-care, like choose your own adventure for what that looks like. But it doesn't have to be all on us. And that's, I guess, something that I need to remind myself of when I think I need to prioritize self-care. It's not hiding away. It's actually showing up.
Yeah. No, that's really well said, and it's great. It's a great point. And I want to touch on two things that you mentioned there. One thing further back, which is, I think, a really important distinction, and it's like that we have the feeling that the isolation is required because as a child, oftentimes when that's where the pattern was created, as a child, that was literally what we had to do to be safe, right? Many people are in circumstances like that. And so getting small, getting quiet, getting as isolated as possible was essential. And so I think the very first step is just realizing that, we're at the point where we are, and we're particularly, we're speaking about this in the context of manhood. And so as a man, if you're an adult man, you did make it through. It's a big thing, regardless of what happened. You are here now. And that's a big achievement. It's a big statement of reality. And so just knowing that regardless of any of the circumstances, I did what it was needed to be here, and I made it through, I survived. And just that one thing alone, I think, can be that one statement, or that one piece of perspective alone is it goes really far in rewriting the code when it comes to how we take care of ourselves, because it's no longer required that we get small, because we stand in who we are now. We have we hold the place that we hold, and then I like how you touched on, or I like the point about modern self-care and how it's really skewed. And I think we look at it totally wrong, right? Like, not to be esoteric or to be any way, but to say, like, what do we actually mean when we say self-care? Like, what are we talking about as the self? I mean, are we talking about like our nervous system? Are we talking about our perception of our psychology? Are we talking about our spiritual perception of ourselves? There's so many aspects. And so generically, I think self-care gets pretty lumped in with just dopaminergic release. Like, what can we do to feel the quickest dopamine release? And it's I think that's the wrong perspective, at least not a useful one most of the time. Now, like, getting a good reboot for our nervous system to calm down and introduce a little dopamine and maybe some chocolate. There's always a time for that. There's a place for that, and it's essential too, right? It's how we evolved, but also taking into account the other aspects. And I think a big one is time. because if we do stick with that, with the aspect of dopaminergic, just neurochemistry, like a dopamine hits great and it feels great at the time, and sometimes it helps to calm the nerves. But then what is the 12-hour, 24-hour, 1 week timeline going to look like based off of that, right? So it's, if we keep it in perspective, caring for the nervous system, caring for the body is, I like to think of it sometimes as like extending the time horizon. You know, like if what I do right now, how's it going to make me feel tomorrow at the same time, or how am I going to feel for the rest of the week based off of this one thing? And so sometimes it might be to withdraw, right? But it may be to withdraw to a walk rather than in your bedroom, or rather than, you know, whatever the isolation might look like. And the big thing for me is food. Sometimes I do a little bit of stress eating, right? And so it's like not going straight for the triple chocolate, whatever I have in the fridge. But you know, like if I do need to feed the body, replenish the body and the nervous system, doing so with healthy, nutrient dense stuff, because it still is a self-care. And I think we can apply the same concept to different aspects. It's like, yeah, if my body needs rest, then I rest for X amount of time. I don't rest for the next 72 hours. Like I dedicated rest in, and I feel better. But yeah, all that to say, keeping the aspect of self-care in perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
To begin where you began, the idea of like, is this story that I'm telling myself still true? And I like what you're talking about in terms of like, well done, you've made it this far. Like, you survived a period that you didn't feel safe. You made your own safety in order to weather the storm and to get to now. And just appreciate, like, being thankful to that boy who did what was required to get to today.
Very true.
I don't think we give themselves enough credit. We focus on the hardship and the trauma. We might even have made peace with the hardship and the trauma.
Yeah.
But we don't express gratitude for the effort and the pain that they went through in order to, in order to be here now. So I think there's a point there just to like, yeah, man, like, thanks for friggin' doing what you needed to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to do something differently, because whilst there were periods where I wasn't safe, physically, emotionally, that might not be true now. Like, there might be a narrative that men will always disappoint me, men will always hurt me, men will always let me down. It's like, yes, there was a time where that was true, and you did what you needed to do. Now, if I look at my life today, and I look at the men that I've invited into my life, can I trust them? Are they hurting me? Are they disappointing me? No.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to write a new story. And that could be said for anything. It's like, is this still true? And like, just be honest. It's like, well, I'm still telling myself the story, but it's not accurate anymore. So there's that kind of like accountability there. And I guess give ourselves the opportunity to continue progressing. And the second thing that was interesting is, yeah, like around that self-care point of view. And I think it's vitally important to, like, because we're gonna have these moments where we feel like withdrawing, we feel like isolating, we feel like we need time away. And time away is fine. Like, we need time by ourselves. Sometimes, I'm an introvert, sometimes my social battery gets drained and I'm like, just can't handle people. I need that time by myself.
Yes,
but it's what does time by myself look like? So if we know that moments like that are going to come, which they will, it's like, well, what's the game plan? What tools do we have in our toolkit? What,
Yep.
what players do we have on the bench that we can, like, tag team into the game, so that we're not just going back to our bedroom and having the triple choc bloody Ben and Jerry's, to just like episodes of Friends or whatever you like to watch. I don't know. What do you like to watch? Do you like to watch Friends?
Not Friends.
Not
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, have that game plan, know what the other alternatives are. And I like what you said about It's not withdrawing into your bedroom. It might be withdrawing into a walk, and still giving ourselves that space and the simple things, being outdoors, fresh air, seeing things from a different perspective, moving the body. So you're still like meeting the need just to like be by yourself, but you're doing it in a way that might keep your brain moving forward, as opposed to, and we know what it's like, right? We sit in our bedroom and suddenly the thoughts that aren't so helpful are starting to speak a little bit more loudly, and it's like, actually, is this the type of space that I need right now?
Yeah. Those are great points. Yeah. And having a bit of an action bias, but sometimes action is to be still in a way.
And that's where intention is big, right? Like I often think that it's like, if we are intentional with our stillness, it's not like that's still action. Like action isn't always like doing. And there's a lot of people who are addicted to action because they're terrified of being still. But so long as stillness is intentional, that is also action. That is also something that should be prioritized. You're not falling behind by taking 20 minutes out in the morning or evening just to sit and just to be grateful and just to feel the air coming in and out of your nose. Like that is helpful to everything else you want to do. So I like that it's still action with intention.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I do want to touch on the other part of the core question here, which is particularly when we asked the question before, how do we ensure we do self-care while also making sure we don't isolate? But the last part to that was particularly when other people are relying on us, because that changes the game. A lot of men with families, a lot of people who are providing for others. It adds an element that can be really challenging when you know that there's something that needs to be addressed or cared for about yourself, whether it's a trauma pattern or otherwise, however that needs to be addressed, and that's there. But then you also are committed to providing for your wife, your kids, your partner, whoever it might be, right, or your community. And so it becomes a challenge. It can become a challenging kind of moral dilemma in the psyche, where it's like, I know I need to take care of myself, but if I take care of myself, I'm letting other people down, and that's a tough one. But I think perspective here is particularly crucial. And really, to give like a super basic description of what I'm thinking here, is the reality, just always coming back to the reality that to do our best for others, we've got to be at our best, right? So sometimes that requires us stepping aside or stepping back when possible, or at least if you're in the heat of the moment and shit's got to happen, and there's your kids or your wife or the people you care about need you to take care of them. But you also know that you need to take care of yourself. But no matter what, you're dedicated to completing whatever the given scenario is. I think just almost like putting a pin in it in the mind, like, okay, I will take care of myself. I am going to get through this, and I'm going to make this time at X time or X day, X hour. And you give yourself that objective point. Like, if you're in an intense situation, you're like, okay, it's going to take me 4 hours to get through this. I feel like crashing, but I'm going to get through this 4 hours. And as long as you set that what is the word? Non-negotiable event, that I will take care of myself, then in 4.5 hours I will do X for myself. I will go home, make sure everybody's safe, and then I'll rest, or I'll eat, or I'll do whatever it is. It's important. It's important to keep perspective there, because sometimes we are caught in the moment and we've got to get stuff done. But what it also lends to, I think, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about this, it just always comes back to it being a practice, an ongoing practice. Because when we find ourselves hijacked in the moment, it's so oftentimes it's because it's just a pattern that's being repeated, right? Like we we work ourselves into the hole, and then we collapse, and then we recover, and we work ourselves into the hole, we collapse, and then we recover. And so knowing that it takes time to change the pattern, and doing a little bit at a time, and giving yourself grace while you shift the pattern. What do you think about that?
Yeah, just on that last point, the tendency to work ourselves into the ground and then feel like we need to recover, and then work ourselves into the ground again, and then feel we need to recover. And I think that's where we need to be careful, right? Like, self-care isn't something you do when you're crashing. Like, in order for us to show up as the best version of ourselves, like, the best version of ourselves isn't up here. It's probably like here, but it's consistently there. It's not here, 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 here.
Yeah, well said.
It's, operating at that 80% consistently is better than the 100%, once a week.
Yeah.
And this is probably, as I say this, a reminder for me to do that, right? It's like planning out my week so that there's things that I'm doing in the areas that are most important for me in order to be the best version of myself for those who need me. That's the first thing, is kind of scheduling out my week so that it's, when I look at my week, I'm a big Google Calendar fiend, and I like the colors, and, I color code different things that are aligned to my values. So, I've got green for like time in nature. I've got like a salmon for health related things. And then I've got yellow for social connection. So when I look at my week, if it's not colorful, I know there's probably something off. So if, on a Sunday afternoon, I'm looking ahead and I see a very monochromatic schedule, it's like, okay, well, let's take some time now. Like, if I know I've got a big week, like, it's even more important. But it's like, okay, let's like reach out to a few mates and kind of see how we can, embed some social time, or just something fun, or something to look forward to. Because I think having those things to look forward to in the heat of the battle, it's like, okay, look, I already know that on Thursday evening or Sunday night, I've got this, so we can regulate ourselves or calm ourselves in the heat of the battle a little bit more effectively. So that's something that helps me, might help you or others. But the other thing too, like, and I'll ask you a question at the end of this. It's the importance of, like, because as men, we feel like we need to, like, if we've got girlfriends or partners or wives, like, the importance of just communicating where we're at and not bursting out in rage when it becomes too much. And that was the example I had growing up. Like, Dad would try and carry everything, and then it would break. And when it broke, it was like Armageddon.
Yeah, sure.
Which isn't, as we know, like, isn't a great example. Like, for me as a kid, it's like, okay, well, that's the norm. Like, you have to carry everything yourself, and then anger is the end product when or when it becomes apparent that you can't carry yourself. But the importance of communication and bringing our partners and loved ones on that journey, and let them know, like, let them in. Like, what is it that we're carrying? What is it that we're struggling with? What is it that we're needing from them? Like, how can they support? Because it's not just us. If we're in a relationship, that's a reciprocal arrangement. There's going to be times when they just, the weights they're carrying, they can't do on their own, and we're going to have to step up and help them. And it's the same for us, right? Like, women are maybe better at opening up, but for us, it's like, well, what can we learn from them, and how can we let them in on that journey so that we can carry the burdens together, so we're not reaching that point where we're just like, I can't do this, like, like, whatever it looks like or sounds like.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, like, how do you invite communication into your relationship when you're maybe challenged or struggling or feeling overwhelmed?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think a big aspect is the humility. Again, coming back to humility, which is being, like, when you're triggered, your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system's aroused, and you're in fight or flight, or even if you're just tired, right? Like, you got a poor night's sleep and you're just not feeling it. The humility to say that Like even when you feel angry or frustrated or irritable or whatever it is, the humility, like the first aspect is humility. But then also, if you're if you're pretty well matched with your partner, or you're with someone who understands you, they're already getting, even early on, they can feel when the vibe's off, right? They know something's not there. And I think the big challenge with men is exactly what you described. Like we think that expressing it's going to make us weak in some way, right? Like expressing our lack or our feeling of lacking, or of it being too much, or fill in the blank, that somehow that's going to make us weak. So I would explore closely, like what is it that's actually what's giving us that perception. And I think oftentimes it does go back to that younger part of ourself. And I know this is pretty far back in the discussion, but you mentioned caring for or having gratitude to the younger part of ourselves who got us through hard times. And that is such an important thing that you named, because those are always part of us. And if they're not acknowledged, if they're not seen for what they are, and if we try to push them away, they're always there, and they always have somewhat of a rebellion, kind of a pushback, because they deserve to be seen. Those parts of us that went through it, they deserve to be seen. They need to be seen. And if they're not acknowledged, there's an unresolved. There's always going to be an unresolved aspect there, and so that's such an important thing. Is going back and seeing the parts of us, what they went through, acknowledging and being gracious, or having gratitude for what they went through, and then also, reconciling that you can move forward now in a different way. And so the reason I bring that back up is I think so much of the time when we are triggered, we're in that space, we feel that if we do admit how we're feeling and what we're experiencing, that it will make us weak. But I think that comes from that same place where it's just really a matter of safety, right? And so we all carry our own challenges, our own traumas from the past, most humans do, at least. And so, yeah, so just I think an important part, at least, it may not be the full solution, but an important step is that humility, and that understanding that if we're with someone that that's a good fit for us, or that we have a deep connection to, trusting them enough to admit how we're feeling, and knowing. I think here's another part, is that we have a fear that they're going to leave us, right? Like if they think we're weak, that's why else would we care if they think we're weak, unless we're afraid that they're going to leave or be gone. So it's a bit of an act of faith, a leap, and also trusting ourselves, particularly early on in relationships, like knowing that, okay, if this person does leave because they perceive me as weak, then I know that I'm strong enough in who I am to move on, and to find what I need, and the person that I can match with, who will be the most productive. We can give the most together. And so, yeah, that's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one, but I think it's a good place to start. What a little long-winded return there, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess it's like I guess it goes back to that, like fear of abandonment, or fear of fear of loss. The weakness, like being perceived as weak. Like women, I guess there is that like implied need for strength, like, in their like to carry them through their emotional seasons, like, month to month.
Without question, sure.
Right. So it's like, how do we be strong for them when we're also feeling weak? I don't know, like the first thing that comes to mind is like, what is strength? Like, what does it mean to be strong as a man in a relationship? And I think there's a stereotype around what that looks like. Sometimes it could just be like holding space, like you kind of, if you imagine that image of like, the woman like, hunched over and the man's just around her with, his arms wrapped around her kind of thing, and just holding her in that vulnerability or in that emotional moment. That's strength. It's not carrying the weight of the world. It's just,
holding
just
the
holding the space. That's strength in that moment, and allowing her to find her strength. Because that was the other thing you mentioned is knowing ourselves. Like, if, let's say, it all turns to shit, it's like, that's not a reflection of my lack of strength or my inherent weakness, because I know who I am. I've defined that. I have convictions in myself as a man, independent of the relationship. And I think that's where we're getting a little bit lost, and that codependency is the trap, where we feel like we're trying to find something in the other person, which is dangerous. There's a lot of, maybe I'm generalizing, but there's a lot of people searching for something. Maybe online dating is a reflection of that. We're searching for something, and we're never content with what we find, so we just keep searching. But it's like, really, there's nothing that we're missing that we're trying to find. What we're really looking for, if we say we're really looking for love, is we're looking for someone to share the journey we're on. And if those two journeys align, then we can walk side by side. And maybe sometimes one person falls a little bit behind and we reach back and pull them up. Maybe we're a little bit ahead, and we look to the other person for inspiration and courage and strength. But fundamentally, we're walking the same journey, but it's our own journeys. We're just doing it together. And love is the service or the action that we give to the other person to help them be the best version of themselves on that journey. This is maybe a digression, but I feel like that's so important, because it's not like we're not missing anything. We're not weak. We're not weak or strong. We just are. We're just figuring things out as we go. And the relationship is a space where we can no longer have to figure it all out on our own. We've got that other person alongside, and then it's just talking, sharing, and that's, I don't know. How does that sound for you? Like, if you're struggling, what's the first thing you say to invite the person in to say, I need support?
Yeah, I think that at this point in my relationship, my partner knows pretty quickly, probably based on what I'm eating or how much I'm eating. If I've gone and grabbed a bag of chips from the cupboard and I have cookies in the other hand, something's probably off, right? but yeah, no. In all honesty, with all joking aside, it's at this point for me, it's as simple as, hey, I've got to take care of myself for a little bit, and just being able to make that statement. And it's not just making the statement verbally and not withdrawing physically is such a big difference, because, and particularly for the feminine, I will put that in, the feminine, they experience the world a little bit differently. Like, if me and you are hiking the trail and one of us is pissed off about something, the other guy knows, and no words are needed. Like, that's it. We keep hiking. We do our thing. But with the feminine, it's different. It's not that they don't understand. It's that their nervous system, and again, it's not to generalize, but somewhat observably, is the feminine nervous systems can start drawing all of these not correlations, but conclusions. Just start drawing all these potential conclusions, and they will just go from thing to thing. And so they do need some reassurance oftentimes. And when it's that is strong. I guess, coming back to what you said, it's interesting that willingness to make the statement of how we're feeling, what we're going through, that is paradoxically to what we, or contrary to what we often think, that is the strong action, is to say, hey, I'm feeling this way and I've got to take care of myself. And what it does instantly is it tells the feminine, this isn't about you. I'm experiencing something. I've got to take care of myself. And if you're with a good woman, she picks up on that really quick. And then it's most of the time, the feminine then tries to give us what we need to support us, whether that's something simple like giving us a hot drink or some food or something, or just giving us the quiet space. But yeah, that's for me, just making the statement, the initial statement, hey, I've got to take care of myself for a little bit. And I'm also very introverted, as you know. And so that can be really tough, even with people we're close to and that we know and have a certain degree of understanding about us. It still can be really hard just to say that. But just that one step to me goes a really long way. And then, yeah, it's a journey too. Like with so many things, it's a journey. So the more and more you get to know the person you're with, then the more and more you understand each other without too much overcomplication and communication.
It's funny I like what you said around, I just need to take some time out for myself. That, yeah, because I was talking to a friend the other day whose partner is, he's taking time out for himself, but he's not saying that he's taking time out for himself. So then the conclusions that she's jumping to are all about, like, he doesn't love me anymore. I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. Like, is it over? Like, have I betrayed him? Have I let him down in some way? Like all of these conclusions that he's just overwhelmed. He's like at capacity, over capacity, and needs some time out for himself. Yeah. Which is fine, but it's that step to say, hey, I'm still here for you. I still love you. Nothing's changed, but I just need time out for myself.
Sure.
And that's the reassurance that women need sometimes, right? Like to avoid that conclusion jumping. And, that's generalizing. I do the same thing. There's another example where I was jumping to conclusions the other day, and very anxiously I sat down and said, hey, I've been feeling really anxious today because I felt really disconnected and I felt like you pulled away, and I need a bit of reassurance. So it's not saying that men or women do it more or less necessarily, but it's just that little link in there that's like, hey, I'm still here. I still love you. I've still got you, but I just need a moment to myself just to like figure some things out, or just to do something I enjoy, or take the next step, or like whatever that is. So I think that's that's something that not like, it just seems like such a pattern where I don't know, it seems so easy talking about it just to say that. Yes. But to actually do it just seems like where does that pattern come from?
Like we talked about before, I think at the end of the day, you could sum it up to just showing up. And sometimes showing up is to show up for yourself, because when you show up for yourself, you're going to be at your best in the relationship, right? So sometimes I think showing up in the context of the relationship equates to showing up for yourself. And so when you make that statement, hey, I need to take care of myself for a little bit, you're making an explicit statement, and you're saying I'm showing up here to do what's needed, right? So that I can be at my best. And then when that happens, and like we're fully committed to it, so often it takes a matter of an hour, 2 hours, and then we're like, we can be recharged, or it might just be the next day, right? Like if it's late in the day, then we recharge, and we're at exponentially further. Because I think the problem is we put it off and we put it off, and we keep grinding, and we try to just show in the false sense, we try to show up, but we can't fully show up because we're not at capacity. And so then this is the trajectory. It just slowly goes down more and more until we eventually crash. And then we really aren't present, and then problems happen. But when we do explicitly show up by showing up for ourselves, it's a totally different pattern. And it, like I said, oftentimes it'll be an hour, 2 hours, and then you're recharged and ready to go, and then good things happen.
Yeah, things change quickly. Just keep moving forward, do the little things, talk about it, and then before you know it, things look very, very different. Fascinating conversations and important conversations, because like the conversations, I guess there's two key domains that we looked at, right? It's that like self-care from a like a mentorship and reaching out for support, and what does that look like? And then with all of that said, it's like, well, what does that look like then within the relationship context?
Yeah.
How can we be showing up for our partners? How can we be communicating to our partners? How can we still have time for ourselves without be withdrawing, or like the perception of withdrawing or pulling away from them? Both, like I connect strongly with both of those areas. As you know, like new relationship, reaching out to mentors, and the previous stories around trusting men and inviting new men in and opening up and being vulnerable to those figures. So I hope that those listening to this can take something out of that, and learn something from that. And yeah, we'll obviously continue exploring questions like these and more coming up. But any final thoughts from you?
No, I think you summed it up nicely. Keeping it in context, showing up, and doing what's needed. At the end of the day, we gotta adapt and do what's needed, right? So yeah, sweet. All right, man. Till the next one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, check out this one or this one, depending on the orientation. And see you guys in the next one. What is blue, after all? Is my blue your blue?